Hey everyone, we're going to take a look at a bottom-up modeling strategy for the quick slider design and kind of see how Fusion organizes all these components not only in the data panel but also in the browser. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and open up the data panel, and here within Activity 226 I've already created a folder called bottom up. So I'm going to go ahead and double click into this folder. That way anything we save winds up inside of it. I'm going to go ahead and close the data panel to give some more screen space, and we're going to go ahead and start by, I've got an untitled design file. We're going to create a sketch. I'm going to choose the XZ plane using a center rectangle basing off the origin. We're going to go 2 inches deep by 5 inches wide, and I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch and extrude to be 3/4 of an inch tall, or 0.75. You're going to notice the operation. Anytime we start one over here in the extrude command, you're always going to see new body gets created. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. One thing to kind of note as we go through all the components and everything is here is the browser for this. This is a very simple part, but even your more complex parts will go through and have this same kind of structure to it. You've got a component icon, which is just a single cube. This one has been activated, so that means you got to kind of think of a component as a container that houses all of the sketches, bodies, work geometry, all that stuff, images, whatever you're using to model this particular component, it's kind of housing that. So, and there's some different reasons why you need to know components versus bodies and why they're so different. So here, the component is right now unsaved, but once we save it, which we can do right now, and we'll call this base, and I can hit save. You'll see the base component, and it gives you a version number to see, you know, how many times that this has been saved or edited or changed. So right now I've got version 1, which is the very first thing we've got. So here you can see I've got one body. When I hover over it, it highlights always there. Anytime you do an extrude, revolve, loft, or sweep, you're going to be creating a body. Anytime you do a 3D modeling feature, you're going to create that. Down here in your modeling timeline, you can see you've got a sketch and you've got the extrude that was done to create the body. And in here you can also see sketches that are housed within the component. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of just kind of what we're looking at and some of the things that get organized in there. I'm going to go ahead and open up a new design file, and we're going to go ahead and model another component here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch, choose the YZ plane. I'm going to model a 2-point rectangle. I'm going to kind of track off of the origin here. And we can go ahead and dimension. This is going to be 2 inches tall by 2 inches wide. I also want to make sure that the midpoint, so I'll use a geometric constraint, midpoint of this line is constrained to the origin. So that'll lock that into place. You can do this in a lot of different ways. I'm going to use an arc. So I'm going to use a center point arc. Go right to the middle. You're going to see the midpoint gets picked up there in blue with the triangle symbol. Grab the corner, strike your arc to the other, and there we go. So I can also trim this. If I trim this line, you're going to notice that arc goes blue. That means it's still able to be moved. So you can see it kind of moving around there. So here's what I'm going to do. One, you're going to see also with that, this line is able to go up and down. So what might be beneficial is to grab a horizontal vertical, grab these 2 endpoints, make those like that. We could also do that with the center point of the arc, and you can see that once it's lined up, or you could also make it tangent, and that would go through and work as well. While we're here, I'm going to throw a 1/2 inch circle for a hole. We could use a hole command if we wanted to, but just to make this a simple modeling strategy, I'm going to go ahead and say finish sketch, put this in the home position, and we're going to extrude this whole thing other than the hole in the center of the arc there to be 0.75. So and we'll save this as the end piece, or we'll just say end. New design. We're going to go ahead and create a sketch. I'm going to choose the XY plane here, drawing a circle. It's going to be a 1/2 inch to be put into that hole in the end. Finish the sketch. We're going to extrude this to be 6.5 inches. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to save. We'll call this rod. Another new design. Create a new sketch. I'm going to choose the XZ plane, and I'm going to create a center rectangle. This is actually going to be a square, 1 inch by 1 inch. I'm going to throw a circle right here in the middle that's going to be a 1/2 inch in diameter. and I'm going to finish the sketch and extrude this around the circle to be 1 inch tall. And I'm going to say OK. So once I hit save, we're going to call this slider block and save that there. So here's the thing I really want you to take a look at, is how the browser is organized. All of these components, we can go through all 4 of them, and we can see that we can have sketches, we have a body, 1 sketch, 1 body. You know, it's kind of comprising these components. Slider block has those in order to exist. Same thing with the rod. It has 1 body, it has 1 sketch. The end component, same thing. 1 body, 1 sketch. So just like how we did in the base, you can see all those things. So, and when I open up my data panel, you can see here are all 4 components that we need for the design to exist. So what I'm going to do now is, in order to assemble these together, usually the process we need is like an assembly file. So for Fusion, you really don't have an assembly file type like you do in Inventor or SolidWorks or, you know, any other popular CAD program. So I'm actually going to go ahead and open up a new design, and this is going to be untitled. While I've got that open, I'm going to go ahead and close these other tabs with the components, and I'm going to have to save this first. So I'm going to do Quick Slider Assembly as the file name. You'll see it will pop up in the data panel. I like to have this open when I do these next steps, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert the base component into the current design. It's going to drop it in right at the origin of this design file, or if you think about it, at the assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and select OK, and in order to keep this from moving around, I can see that I've got the base. If I right click on it, I can choose the ground option. That will put a thumbtack on that component icon to show that it's not going to be moving. This is also going to show the base component. There's the single cube. That means it's there. If you look at the top of this one, this changes from a single cube over to multiple cubes. So this is showing you that we've got more than 1 component kind of existing in this file, and we will as soon as we insert some of the others. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert into current design. Go ahead and drop an end component in there, and I'm going to do that one more time. Same thing with our last 2 parts. Now usually I like to position these in a way that we will be assembling them. So then that way they're all ready to go in the right position. We don't have to do any extra steps. And this has already given us our parts that we want to have in the right positions. So I'm going to go up here to joint. I'm going to grab a point on a face of the end piece, and I'm going to do the same thing for the base. So we're going to, right now this motion is set to slider. I'm going to do rigid, so that way they go together and we can preview the motion. I'm going to select OK. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Rigid joint those together. I can also see that from the little mini toolbar. I can select OK. Same kind of thing here. I'm going to grab the end of this aluminum rod and grab the outside ring of that. That'll put that in there. If it flips by accident, you can always flip it so that way it's in the right position. And then for the slider block, I'm going to go ahead and joint, hover over the inside of the hole. I'm going to hold the control key and I'm going to grab that center point. Same thing here on this. You're going to see there's a center point right there on your rod. This one here, we're going to throw a slider motion. And if I go into the motion tab, I can actually turn on, because I want it to slide within the confines of the end pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and check the minimum and maximum. Now I want to go ahead and start with, we've got it right in the middle, so that means it's going to travel in a negative and in a positive direction. So I'm going to have to put -2 inches so we can see it move to position there. And then in this one, we're going to go to 2 inches. So the biggest frustration a lot of times everybody has, if you flip these numbers, Fusion's going to fight you. It does not like minimum numbers to, to go through and to have. You can have positive numbers, but it doesn't like having the negative number in the maximum. So it's definitely going to go through and really kind of fight you on those things. So I'm going to go ahead and select OK. Here we got our full quick slider assembly done. And if I want to, like here on this slider joint, I can always say go to home position. That puts it right back in the middle. And there we go. So that is kind of really very basic assembly with this. But what I want to show you with bottom-up approach is once I hit the save button, is here is what we have. We've got our components. We've got our chain links that show that these are not the original files and that they're linked from other files that exist elsewhere. And here are those components right here. I usually like to organize them where they're all together in the same folder. That way they're easy to find, easy to locate. So, and usually Fusion likes that too. So here you can go through and again, just noting those browser components and just kind of how it gets organized for bottom-up approach. So let's take a look at the next video. We'll do a top-down approach. And then in a subsequent video, we're going to go through and take a look at how to edit these assemblies in their respective strategies that they've been modeled.